Hey everybody, it's Kevin Purcell, and we are here with the Theotek podcast. And today we're going to talk a little bit about something maybe a little bit out of our normal subject matter and what we normally hit on, and that is the recent issue with Reddit. If you're not familiar with Reddit, we're going to go ahead and let Antoine share with you what that is. But today we've got just a couple of our normals, regulars. I don't know any of us are normal, but we're regularly part of the podcast. But Rick's still down in Louisiana with his, is it your mother-in-law, is that right?
I'm now at my mother-in-law's.
Yeah, okay.
Except I'm sitting at a Starbucks this morning in Bossier City, Louisiana.
All right. And, of course, Antoine is back in his crib in Charlotte. Good to see you, Antoine. Kick it off. What's going on with Reddit, and why do we care?
Well, Reddit is, if you think back to your user group or Usenet communities, it's a extremely large, self-governing web community, and it's a really good place in regards to any kind of subject goes. So you get folks that can pretty much answer anything. Of most famous, Reddit has these threads where celebrities, government leaders, come in and do what are called Ask Me Anythings, or AMAs. And so you get everybody from presidents to Elon Musk, all different types of personalities that come in and do these. And again, these are anything goes kind of question and answer sessions. And then aside from this, Reddit has humongous, inordinately large base of sub-communities. And these sub-communities all are run by volunteer-based moderators who just kind of keep a lid on most of the action, keep things civil for the most part. It just so happened, though, that amongst the restructuring that was going on, one of the administrators for Reddit, one of the persons that was working for Reddit full-time, who also organized these AMAs, she was let go. And she was let go of without any kind of notice to the community, without any kind of handoff happening, and it caused the community to kind of go, what the hey? They threw their hands up. It's kind of like, your ministry, and all of a sudden you lose that administrative aide who makes the wheels run, and you expect everything to keep running on time. And so the new CEO, she let this person go along with other folks, and the community very much revolted. The volunteer moderators began shutting down other communities. Persons started leaving Reddit en masse, and then leadership at Reddit, Ellen Powell, who you might remember from the discrimination case in California not too long ago, she tried to do an about face, but they haven't really hired the woman who was let go back. It's really a mess, and it's really a lesson that you wouldn't think is a theology or a tech theo issue, but it very much is when we're talking about communities and it's not just how do we use the social network or how do we use products and services, content management systems, but how do we deal with the effects of people in those communities who may be volunteering their time or who may be lightly paid, if you will, lightly compensated for helping us manage those communities. So that's the reason why I pulled that subject out of Reddit, because I thought it was pretty good. There's an article I passed around to all of us a little bit earlier from Mark Dew, and he read 4 different takeaways for churches in regards to this Reddit blackout, and it gets you thinking. Are we managing? Not just, hey, do I have a social network or a Facebook page or a Facebook group or whatever it is for my church, but how are we actually dealing with the culture fit of that virtual community around our faith community?
I think it's a good parallel. If you think about our churches, all participation is voluntary. it's not like the medieval church where everyone was required to go. And so, if you've ever been in a situation, that maybe parallel like a minister leaving or or worse, a minister being forced out, fired for good reason or bad reason, that there will always be families who leave because of that, and sometimes the full situation is not known. But I think it's important to keep in mind in churches, especially that the people aren't there because they have to be there. They're there hopefully because they want to be there, and you can't treat those people who are serving in voluntary positions as employees. You've got to handle them differently.
Sorry, Antoine, I muted you because of the feedback issue there. So
No, no problem, no problem. I was going back and forth as well, but I agree, Rick. I know we talk about it if service communities a lot of times talking about how do you appreciate those that serve, um, and this Reddit example is probably an extreme example, but it does point to kind of those same pain points. It wasn't just that this lady was let go, who did a whole lot, but it was also a lack of communication. There was no communication out to the other moderators. This woman voluntarily, in her role as an admin for Reddit, the company, was the organizer for those AMAs, and she organized the AMAs across all of the sub communities. So she had she had a specific role that she was let go from, but then she had some generic things that she was doing that ended up being the thing that made the culture what it was. And a lot of times when we're dealing with our virtual communities, we might have that loud person or the person that always seems to be timely in answering questions or putting something together, and we don't really take into account that the things that that person may or may not be doing might not be their specific role, but it's the thing that keeps us moving forward. And so, it's an interesting viewpoint. You said looking at the sports from the playoffs only kind of moment. We're only looking at it during this high pressure situation. But I think it's something worth paying attention to if in the midst of our virtual evangelism, virtual ministries, that we're paying attention to how the culture is affected.
I think that a couple of things I'd like to say sort of at the top here, and one is, we're using this Reddit issue kind of as a, how do we handle this kind of thing in the church, and I think that's appropriate. I will say I'm not a Reddit user very often, and in fact the first time I even went in and logged on to Reddit was this morning in I don't know how many months. I've made one comment in Reddit, and it was about the Packers when they won the Super Bowl back in like 2010. So that's how long it had been. And just in my looking at Reddit, call me a prude or whatever, but I looked at the AMA section, and there's some pretty adult things going on there, and so I don't think we are at all trying to endorse all of that kind of content on Reddit. Maybe Antoine, you can tell me, is there redeeming content on Reddit? Sorry, buddy, I got you muted.
Yeah, there is redeeming content on Reddit. What's the best way to say this that it doesn't offend half of my brothers and encourages the other half? There were aspects of Paul's ministry where he found himself in a marketplace area. He might have been in downtown Athens or sitting with senators, and the language was not all that appropriate. Or some of the apostles, early church leaders, were around the temple of a goddess where some unseemly things were happening, but they still had to stand for the gospel in the midst of that. And that ends up being any believer's posture in an audience like Reddit or 4chan or any other sites that really just seem to not have a lid on top of it. Are there topics for believers there? Yeah. Are the religious topics at Reddit incredibly heated, better than any seminary that I've ever been in, and I've been in a few. It's intense. It's not someplace that I would say a person should go just to go. Those AMAs by themselves can be some pretty heated areas, but Reddit is one of those deep websites. It goes it's a very deep hole, and so there are some redeeming things and a whole lot of questionable items throughout the various communities there. There's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah, for example, I'm just looking at the AMA section, and it's got something as minor as, or not minor, but non-controversial when it comes to morality. As someone says, I was abandoned at birth at a hospital in the 80s and turned over a local Masonic home and adopted. Okay, well, that sounds like an interesting story that might be worth discussing and talking about. But then there's one down here, about I'm an amateur pornographer. My videos are coming out soon. And surely this is just a person trying to drum up business for their nudie pictures, and I'm not interested in subjecting myself to that. So if you've never used Reddit, be careful. If you are susceptible to temptations in certain areas, probably best to just stay away. But if you are a Reddit user, this is something interesting for you. But I like to think, as we were talking about, or as you guys were talking about the issue of if a church dismisses a staff member and there's sort of confusion and people aren't sure about it, that can cause a lot of difficulty and controversy within the church. And I think that's a great topic for us, in what we often cover. I think in that area we need to be very open. There needs to be maybe not all the things discussed, because sometimes ministers are removed for very private kinds of reasons, that opening them wide to the public would be damaging to that person. But we need to be as transparent as possible in that area. Would you guys agree with that?
Definitely. That's the difficulty that churches run into. I've been on personnel teams, and sometimes you have situations where there are things going on that a staff member may not work out, or for whatever reason. It may not be a moral reason that it's not something that has to be taken before the entire church, but the church doesn't know all the details. And that makes it very difficult to protect the privacy of the individual versus how much the church has a right to know. And I think in the case with we keep saying the woman at Reddit, and I can't remember her name. We ought to mention her name, but if I understand the situation correctly, there wasn't a whole lot of information given as to why she was let go, and that we live in an age where people want to know, but it's not always appropriate that people know something, and that's again, churches have to walk that fine line to weigh that.
I agree, Rick. But here's the give and take. With that, like you also being on personnel teams for various organizations, it's how much communication to give out is always the hard part. In this case, with Ms. Taylor, as she was released, there was no communication given out. There was no 2-week notice, 2-day notice kind of thing. She was there one moment, and 15 minutes, it was like 15, 20 minutes before another AMA that she helped organize, put together, she was let go. There was no handoff, it'd be one thing if another person was put in place. Hey, listen, this person's not going to be here for this AMA. Can you, fill in the blanks here? And that portion of service, not that you have to know why the person was fired, but having the clear communication for those handoffs. That makes sense. That's where the beginning of this Reddit hodgepodge ended up happening, and I believe is very much a vital question for many ministries. Here in Charlotte, we've had one too many pastors lately having to step aside or step down for various reasons, and you can see the difference in leadership between those groups that won't tell you what's going on, but there's a clear succession plan. You know, this is what happens when this person's not in place, versus those where you kind of don't even hear about the ministry anymore. Everything kind of just poofs away because there was no kind of communication going on. And especially when it comes to, you know, our folks that are in service ministries, hospitality, facilities management, AV, you know, those are persons that can leave or be let go, you know, really quickly. You know, life happens. But if there's no communication, no planning in there as to what to do, if those persons go, you really do end up leaving your faith community in a lurch.
Sorry, we're all muted here. Yeah, that's a it's just kind of an interesting, you know, thing for us to think about. Anything else on that, Antoine or Rick? That okay. I wanted to move on then, and just, you know, I don't know if any of you are Office users. Rick, do you use Microsoft Office on your Mac?
I do. You know, for a while there, I was trying real hard to use the iWork apps, and I still use Keynote as my teaching platform of choice, but over PowerPoint. But I went back to Microsoft Word about a year ago after Apple updated the whole iWork suite, and I couldn't read old documents in the new software, which was really frustrating. And you know, I've got Word documents going back to 1988, and I've tried to update some of those. But yeah, I've completely gone back to Microsoft Word, and I'm glad to see this update, which I think you're about to tell us about.
Yeah, I've been using this for a little while. It's been in preview, and what we're talking about, if you don't know, is Microsoft just released Word 2016 yesterday, in fact, as an official update. It's been in preview for, I don't know, a couple of months now, and some of us have had the opportunity to look at it and use it. And I'm showing it on the screen right now, and of course I've got a blank document open, but it looks like Word for Mac did before, but it's got a cleaner, more modern interface. And if you're a Windows user, you'll probably notice, hey, that looks a lot like the Word that I use. Mac Word and PowerPoint and Excel looked very different than the Windows version, but they kind of brought it in line with the Windows version somewhat. By the way, I'm also running the preview of the Windows 2016 version of Office, and it has some of the same changes, but there's not a lot that's significantly different. One of the things, it has the OneNote integration. If you are a heavy OneNote, not OneNote, but I mean OneDrive user, if you're a heavy OneDrive user, then you'll notice that when you open up documents, we'll go to the open dialog.
It defaults to OneDrive now, it seems.
Yeah, it does. And so you have this section here. Notice that's the El Capitan cursor that grows. It defaults to your OneDrive, and you can save things to OneDrive, and they will upload almost immediately to your OneDrive account. But I can go in here. Also, if you see recent, so these are all of my recent documents that I've opened here recently, and I haven't done it yet, but on this computer. But you can add. Well, what happened to it? I guess it doesn't have it in the Mac version yet, but there is Dropbox integration on the Windows side, which is a real nice feature. I guess I thought they had that in the Mac version, but I don't see it anywhere. Have you used that Mac on Rick?
No, I've not used the Dropbox integration, but I've been using the beta of this for I don't know, ever since it was first released, because they allowed you to keep the previous version on here too, so it's a safe way to try it out. And I've used both Word and Excel pretty extensively, and I haven't tried to use Dropbox. I just don't save things in there, but I'm sure that's coming if it's not there yet.
Yeah, I hope so, because it's a nice feature if you use Dropbox. If you're not a big Dropbox user, it won't matter to you. I'm just looking at. I'm trying to remember. I'm kind of at a loss of what other
Well,
new features are here because I've been using it for so long. Is there something else that jumps out at you?
well, what really strikes me about this release is that to me, it's not so much that it is uh, that it looks like the Windows version. I think that what is really the common factor is that it looks like the mobile version. It looks a lot. If you've used Office on the iPad, which was very impressive to me from the very beginning, and it's gotten better. And I'd used the iWork suite since the iPad had come out, but they've released very solid mobile versions for both iOS and Android, and and these have the same look and feel of that. And so to me it'll be interesting because if there's a little bit of interesting history here. If you go all the way back to about I'm thinking it's maybe 1994 or 95, when Word 6 and the Office suite that was around that time that came out, Microsoft was trying to make the Windows version and the Mac versions look the same, and Mac users just revolted and there were still people who, as long as they could, ran Word 5 on the Mac until their computers just wouldn't wouldn't load it anymore. And there are still people who cobble together WordPerfect for the Mac because they rejected, the direction that Microsoft took Office. And so I don't think that you're going to have that type of backlash this time. Number one, because it's a different world than it was in the 90s, and number two, because there's so many more choices for Office suites, word processing suites on the Mac. So it doesn't really matter. The world's not so dependent upon it. But again, I think I think that what's driving Office now is going to be the mobile versions. And yes, these versions on Windows and Macintosh are more powerful. They have more features. But I think that the look and feel of them definitely take a nod to the mobile version.
Antoine, you got anything interesting about that?
Yeah, actually, I use Office probably more than I should because I train people how to use it regularly. So I probably use it a bit too much. I find it surprising. I mean, I've not been an Office fan for a long time. I think there are better document formats for just about everything. What I've found since Office 2007 has really been Microsoft paying attention to the things that Office does better and making those features come to the top. And Office 2016 for the Mac kind of brings the desktop laptop Mac, if you will, into that mentality. But I do think and I disagree with that. It's an issue of looking like the mobile, but really it's looking like the cloud version. Office 365 is Microsoft's play, and they would prefer not necessarily that you use the app, but that you would log into their services, that you would use their service layer, and then let that be connected wherever you go. What you can't do, on the mobile version, or you can't do on Office 365, they're making sure that those native apps for Mac and PC are doing those, and that's a good thing for those enterprise needs. But for the casual user, for the semi-casual user, nearly professional small business user, there's not going to be much of a difference between even Office 2010 and 2016, at least not at this point. The integration to Dropbox and OneDrive is excellent. The integration across Office applications is something you just have to experience, to really work out. Having connected spreadsheets from an Excel document that are connected to your PowerPoint document. That's a feature that came out in Office 2013. That's really neat. That from an enterprise, and I get to teach that one all the time. It's a very good feature. Connecting to SharePoint, connecting to Google Calendar, or whatever other calendar system that you have for Outlook, and having that integrate seamlessly across all of your Office applications. Those are things that are really cool, very neat. It's a it's a neat package. You know, if you need to use it, definitely go ahead. I tweeted earlier this week. I was teaching an access, and literally speaking, I can do everything except for smart tags and pivot tables off of Excel for the iPad, and have a similar look and feel to what those folks on the laptop were using from what was happening on my iPad mini. So that those kind of things, really cool, really easy, really efficient, very useful, and I definitely see where Microsoft is going, cloud first, if you will, and that cloud first, mobile first mentality. I don't think the native app, is as important as it seems to be, especially for Word. Outside of mail merge, you have absolutely nothing dedicated that's dedicated to the native app. A few chart things in Excel, but everything else can be done, literally speaking, over the browser-based version of these applications. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, I've got PowerPoint Online open, and you can see that it has a very similar feel with the ribbon interface and the tabs up here. You know, so unless you're a user who uses the complex features, you're not going to miss anything if you just stay in your browser and work with it. And of course, like most systems today, they have some form of a full screen look, and you know, I just went to full screen on Chrome on my Mac here, and so you can, you know, do that. You know, I think it's a pretty good thing. I use the offline version. I've got an Office 365 subscription. I use the fuller version of it so that my son and my wife can also install it on their computers, so that they don't have to buy separate packages. And so it allows you to install with up to 5 users, and they can install on up to 5 devices. And so it's pretty generous. For the official price is, I think, $100 a year. I never spend that much. I always wait. They've got deals, and the deals I've found are usually anywhere from $50 to $60 for a year subscription. And so you just shop around for those, and you can stack them. So like if you buy it for this year, and then 3 months from now you get another one, you can buy that and stack it, and you'll now have 2 years. So it's a pretty good deal. If you're into that, if you like it, you don't even have to pay if you want to use just the simple Office Online version. I think there's kind of a free version. I'm right about that, aren't I?
Yeah, you are, and there's also an academic version, which is a really nice deal. I think it's around $79 for 2 devices for 4 years, and that's a really great value for anyone who's, especially for students, but for instructors as well.
And this Sway, have any of you used this Sway feature?
Yep.
I've been wanting to. I just haven't had a chance yet.
Antoine, tell us more about it.
Take PowerPoint and throw out everything that you knew about PowerPoint, and find yourself in an application that actually works efficiently in a browser, and it's pretty. It's essentially a storyboard. Closest other application that folks might have used is Prezi, closest, but it's more PowerPointy than it is Prezi. It's neat. It's very neat, and it'll scare you. Microsoft has a few of these pieces out there where they have some HTML5 based web apps out there that are just playing with you that work really, really well. And Sway is the kind of thing that makes you wonder why PowerPoint still exists. You know, it's good. It's a really good storyboarding, presentation building image platform. Schniver for the PC, for the Mac. There's another similar application to Sway, minus the notepad, notebook, corkboard piece to it. But it's really neat. Really, really neat. I'm interested to see what how far they're going to push it, because it really is PowerPoint for a digital age. It's not something you print.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna have to take a little bit more look at it. I've put it on my mobile devices. I think it's available both on Android and iOS. Am I right? Yeah, I thought so, and I just haven't used it, haven't touched it hardly, so I'll be interested to find out all the things that you can do with it. One of the things that my wife uses all the time is Publisher, and you'll notice it's not here. That's kind of annoying, you know. And she's got an HP Stream laptop, which would be nice for her to be able to do everything online since it only has 32 gigabytes of storage. But we just went ahead and installed, you know, Office on her computer so that she didn't have to worry about the cloud at all. But all right, well that's Office. Anything you guys want to jump out at? I know you might, both of you might have something to plug because Rick, you just finished a nice long review of the Surface 3, and I also noticed, Antoine, that you had an interesting article on Church Tech today about mobile life in church. So who wants to jump in there first? Either of you?
Yeah, I'll just real quick say, you know, I had promised that review on the Surface 3 a while back. When did the Surface 3 come out? That was March or April? I don't remember. But
It's been a few months now.
Yeah, and so I finally had the chance to sit down and just write about it. One thing I like about writing on my blog is I don't feel the time. I don't feel length constraints. You know, if I want to do something long form, I have the freedom to do that. I didn't intend for it to be quite as long as it is, but I just you know, poured out my thoughts after using it for the past few months, and you know, I do like the device. I just, you know, I give the caveat that it's an expensive device, but it's a quality device, and so you know, I think it would be fine for anyone who. The position I took at the beginning of the post is that most people have more computer than what they need, and so this, even though this is a lesser processor, it's fine for most things. If you're going to be doing heavy-duty video or heavy Photoshop use, it probably wouldn't be the best device, but light Photoshop use should be fine, and certainly occasional video editing should work fine on the device. So it's a recommendation. With if those are okay, then I absolutely recommend it.
I noticed you said something down here about the a screen dimming issue. I also had the Microsoft Surface 3, and since I also have a Surface Pro 3, I went ahead and got rid of mine and actually traded it with a guy on Craigslist for another system, a Lenovo. But I didn't have that problem on mine, and so I wonder if you've got a setting issue or maybe it's a hardware issue.
It could be, and you know, those things are really hard to track down. Where I was writing that, I was sitting in an Applebee's at night where I composed most of that, and so the inside light was dimmed, and I had seen this take place before, but in that consistent low light setting, just about every 10 or 15 minutes, the screen would dim, and you know, and I couldn't adjust it. I couldn't use the keyboard to make it brighter again, but within about 30 seconds to a minute, it would just come back on its own. And so I think it. Go ahead.
I was going to say, did you try going into the settings and turning off automatic brightness levels?
No, I really didn't, and that might have taken care of it. I was mainly trying to get my thoughts down while I had a short amount of time to do that, so I didn't spend too much time troubleshooting the machine.
I also noticed you agreed with me. You dinged the trackpad a little bit on the type cover for the Surface 3. It's just too small.
Yeah, it's too small. It's better. It's better than you know. I had the original Surface Pro, and I have the Surface RT as well. It's certainly better than those, and you can use it in a pinch. But I'd much rather use the pen or my finger.
Yeah, and I agree that the charger is slow. I wish they had used the Surface Pro 3 charging feature, even though.
Well, and you know.
Go ahead.
I remember that podcast where I was broadcasting from the Surface 3, and the battery actually dipped down. You know, it dropped a percentage point or two while it was plugged in, which I thought was very unusual. So I think in their desire to have a compact package, they kind of skimped a little bit on the charger.
That's interesting here. You say at the end that the MacBook took up less space than the Surface 3 and its type cover. on an airplane. That's interesting to read that.
Yeah, I had 2 long flights going out to San Francisco and coming back, and so I tested the line trayability, I guess we could call it, and
Yeah.
the just in that first position, not all the way leaned back, but there's really just 2 positions for the Surface 3, and it's just in that first position where it's most upright. Because of the kickstand, I kind of had that kind of hanging off a little bit, resting on the hinge to get the keyboard, to be back just a little bit, so wasn't hanging off the front of the tray, and that took up a little bit more space than when I used the Surface. I'm sorry, the MacBook on the other leg of the flight.
And then you said you recommended, which I would as well, get the 128 version. Spend the extra $100.
Yes,
definitely get the 128. 64 is just not enough for Windows.
It's not, yeah, and it may be that it's not enough for you and me. I could see a student possibly getting by on the 64, especially if you're saving a lot of things to the cloud. I've got OneDrive installed on it, and it does not automatically download my files because I've got more than what would fit on there. But the biggest factor here, I think, is the 4 gigabytes of RAM. If you're going to really use this if you're going to use this device a lot, I think 4 gigabytes of RAM is best for Windows, just as I would recommend 8 gigabytes of RAM for the Mac.
Yeah, and I told you that I traded mine out for, I got a Lenovo T430S, which is a little bit older machine, but it's got, a Core i5 processor, but it comes with 4 gigabytes of RAM, and I put in an 8 gig stick to bring it up to 12, and it was amazing. I had forgotten how big a difference that brings to a computer. It's been a long time since I've upgraded a system like that, because most of the mobile devices I've had in the last few years didn't have upgradable RAM, from my MacBook to my Chromebooks. And so doing that on that system, just really, really dramatically changed it. So getting as much RAM as you can on a Windows computer is a big deal. Antoine, you have any questions? Go ahead.
I was going to say real quick, and most of these computers today, especially tablets, you can't upgrade later. So it's very important to get the maximum that you can afford, because if you want to have the device for a while, that will make it live longer.
Yeah. Antoine, you have any questions about his review there?
No. Your review actually, Rick, matches a good friend of mine who also has a Surface 3. He traded his Pro 3 for the 3, and is, with the exception of the issues with the screen, he ended up swapping his out freely as well, and has no issues with it. He uses his actually for note-taking in Photoshop. Gosh, I forgot the name. Misfit, Made with Misfit, is an app that he showed me the other day that he's using on his Surface. Really, really cool drawing app. It's a illustration / user interface kind of building application. Seems tailor-made for the Surface, an active stylus. It's really cool.
Well, and then, I ran across some folks online who had traded down from the Surface Pro 3 to the Surface 3 because the battery life is longer. It's fanless. It doesn't get as hot, and it's slightly easier to carry because it's a little bit smaller.
If you go over to gottabemobile.com, you can read my review of it. I also have a review up there, and I've got my video review as well, which you can watch if you prefer. I think a lot of what you said I agreed with in my review. I personally prefer the Surface Pro 3 just because of this power. I'm more of a power user on a computer. I want to do more with it. But I do a lot of comparison between the two devices. So if you're interested in more of a comparative review, you can take a look at that. And I think it's a great computer, again, for the right person. It's just I'm not that right person. So that's why I prefer the Surface Pro 3. All right, Antoine, tell us about your article over at Church Tech Today. You seem to be writing a lot more over there than you have in the past.
Yeah, I do a monthly vignette or semi-monthly vignettes with Lauren and her crew over there. Um, the last article was mobile church trends for auxiliary ministries, which interesting story. I don't know how often you guys talk with different people about their choice about mobile or tablet devices, but I'm in situations where I can ask people fairly often, and generally speaking, I ask teenagers what are their top 3 apps. What's the top 3 applications that you are using, and what's most surprising is that the parents don't know 2 out of those 3 apps usually. They may not even have a password for any of them, but then also how the kids are using those apps. And so that led me down an interesting rabbit trail where I started asking auxiliary ministry leaders, how is mobile being used, if it's being used, or how would they like it to be used? And then just buried my head in a few statistics and some trends. What are some trends that are happening around auxiliary ministry? So everybody that's not named the pastor, and that's not in missions, since those are already fairly well covered. What are they doing, or could be doing, should be doing, want to be doing in regards to mobile and connected apps? And while there are no statistics on the matter, it seems like nobody ever asked that question. There are some interesting trends, and I was able to put those together for Church Tech today, and I did not know that it went up until you mentioned it a minute ago, so that's really cool.
Let me unmute myself. Cool. Yeah, go to Church Tech today, and it's right there at the top. It's the top article this morning, so it's an interesting read. I think let's go ahead and kind of close things out this morning with some recommendations. We've got just a few minutes left, and is there one thing, device, gadget, service, app, piece of software, movie, piece of clothing, I mean, whatever you want. Give us a recommendation. Let's start with you, Rick.
Oh, well, wait a minute. I haven't had a chance to think about this.
Okay, then, I'm sorry.
Let me think about it a second.
I'll give you one. I'll give you one.
Okay, good.
I'll start off. I'm sorry. That was unfair. I shouldn't have done it. I'm showing you something. All things Chromebook. This is the Acer Chromebook 15. Now, I know, Antoine, you kind of gave me that ooh look, but the Acer Chromebook 15 is a wonderful device if you like Chromebooks, but you also are tired of the tiny little bitty screens on the 11-inch and 13-inch devices. This is their latest. I'm reviewing it from Acer. This has an Intel Core i3, I believe it is, and 4 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of hard drive. It's sort of the power user Chromebook. But look at all that space for a keyboard. And so if you're looking for this, I think it's $399 for this one. You can get the Celeron model, which is probably fine for most people. And I think that one is $250 right now. The 15-inch screen is on this model is a 1080p. If you get the lower end model, it's only a 1366 by 768. And so if you can go to this one, I would, because it's a beautiful screen on it. Like all Chromebooks, the screens are cheap, and so it's a little bit dimmer than what you would normally have. But look at that keyboard. If you're a person who does a lot of typing, that's a beautiful keyboard. And then I love how it has the speakers on the top, so if you listen to your music or watch videos and stuff on it, you'll like it. Of course, Acer makes some good trackpads, and this one's very spacious and roomy. It's a bit heavy, and so obviously Antoine's not going to like it because he can't ride his bike and carry this thing around. It'll, sort of weigh him down, and he may not enjoy that, especially out in the heat of Charlotte, North Carolina, midsummer days.
What size screen?
It's a 15.3-inch screen, which that's huge for a Chromebook. Previous to this, the biggest Chromebook you could buy was a 14-inch on the HP Chromebook 14, which, by the way, almost 3 years later, I still think the HP Chromebook 14 is the best, the original HP Chromebook 14. They had the funky-looking sort of orangish pink, and they had kind of a bluish aqua color, and then there was a white one that came with T-Mobile built in. I still think that's the best Chromebook you can buy, even though it has a low resolution screen, but it has a faster Celeron processor than most of the more recent ones. They're going back. They took a step backwards and went with Bay Trail processors instead of Haswell. Now they're starting to go forward a little bit with some of these, but most of them they're unfortunately using the older ones in order to cut corners, and so they're just not as fast. And you don't have to have a lot of power on a Chromebook, but Bay Trail's a little bit too slow for my taste. But anyway, so if you're tired of all the tiny Chromebooks, this is a nice computer. And so now that I've given you some time, instead of throwing it to you so quickly, Rick, we'll start with you. Go ahead. What do you got?
Well, just so that I can actually show you something here, and I think we may have switched to Antoine if this train gets too loud. But I've invested further into my Apple Watch with this new band that I've gotten here. This is the leather loop, and you know, it's a little magnet there that just kind of holds that in place, and it's actually much more comfortable than the whatever, I forget what the material is called that came with my sport watch, but I've been wearing this the past few days, and it's really comfortable. So now I'm even more invested in this device, and so I guess I'm going to be wearing it long term.
So a few days, a couple of weeks later, you're still a fan. You still like it and would recommend it?
Yeah, I would. Enough that I wanted to get a nicer looking band. But yeah, you know, to me, there's not a killer app for it. But I've always been a watch person. I liked wearing watches. I've worn pocket watches at times, and I like the notifications. You know, and I think I told you a few weeks ago about being in New Orleans, and the same was true when we were in San Francisco. I could walk down the street, not knowing exactly where I was going, but I had the location in on the maps on the phone, and it would give me directions as I went. I didn't have to walk around with my face in the phone, and to me that's a really nice feature. It's not one of those things that, you know, the Apple Watch is better than, you know, this or that Android watch or, you know, Android Wear watch, but it's worked out really well for me. Like I said, enough that I would get a new band for it.
All right, Antoine.
Yeah, some months back, when I got my Gear S, I talked about this little Bluetooth headset, this Tron-Fi Bluetooth headset. I have liked this. This one is peach colored. I got a flesh tone colored one because I've been playing with people's heads with the whole regards of having an earpiece in. It looks like a hearing aid. Apparently the folks at Tron-Fi, they liked whatever I said about it on Amazon, so they sent me an updated version. As you can see, it's exactly the same size, and it still costs $20. However, they upgraded the chip, they upgraded the battery, and so now instead of 2 hours of talk time, I get 6, which is absolutely incredible. Standby time is like all day, so I can literally keep it in my ear, of which I have done. It's actually comfortable enough. As you see, I don't have any loop around it. I just go ahead and stick it in, and it stays in my head all day. It does voice dialing without you having to train it, and it can connect to 2 devices at the same time, so which is really helpful if I want to stream from my iPad or talk from my watch. I can have it paired to both of them, and it'll seamlessly switch off between the 2 of them, which is pretty neat. For $16.99 or $17 now, that's probably one of the better investments that I have right now in terms of accessories. You know, and now that I have 2, one can stay in the car and the other one can stay beside the bed or wherever, which is pretty nice and helpful. You can't usually say that about Bluetooth headsets.
So it works
there is
with
no noise cancellation.
It works with more than just Android?
Yeah.
And what's the
brand? It works with everything. Yeah, it's your conventional Bluetooth headset.
You've told us before, but what's the brand again?
Tron-Fi, Tronfy.
Tronfy. Okay, I thought you were saying 5 is in the number. Pronfy. Okay.
That is totally backwards, but hey.
Yeah, I'm just looking it up so we can actually show people where they can find that.
Amazon, Tronfy iWork 4.0 is the formal name of it.
Yeah, I've got it right here. So
yeah, so comes in 3 colors: white, coffee, and black. And like I said, it's for an inexpensive headset. It's great. It comes with a little dongle, which is somewhere on the other side of my apartment, that allows you to listen to both ears. Just plugs right on into the micro USB connector. It takes when I dropped the previous version, when I killed it, it took less than an hour for it to recharge. Generally speaking, I just put it on the charger for like 10-15 minutes, and it tops it off just fine. Like I said, it's for $15-20. It's a pretty good deal. I mean, if you need noise cancellation or other customization, that's a whole different story.
And it's getting great reviews on Amazon. You're not the only person who loves it, because there's only the lowest review is a 4-star, and there's only one of those. So out of 30 reviews, so that's pretty good actually. Mm-hmm. Well, I have taken your lead, and I have picked up. I have on order, and we'll be getting the Gear S tomorrow. And so we'll see how that works. I'm just Moto 360, just not doing it with 5.1.1. It's just, that was a terrible upgrade. It adds new features, but it just doesn't last, and the notifications don't stay on the screen for very long. I've reset it, repaired it with my phone, and it's just not a great experience anymore. And so I think what I'm going to do is hand it down and sell off my son's Gear Live to pay for the Gear S. And I've got a Samsung phone, so I can compare it with my phone. And I think that AT&T lets you use it like a tablet. So I think it only adds $10 as a data thing on it. So that I'll be interested to find that out tomorrow.
I'll say that's almost pure profit for AT&T, because my Gear S is my only phone. I have a prepaid plan with it, and I have not used $10 worth of data at all on any month. It absolutely sips data, and that's with notifications coming to it, pretty regularly. I don't have email coming to it, and I get my share of text messages and a few calls a week, but from a data perspective, I don't even use $10 of data a month. So that's interesting on AT&T's side. I know T-Mobile was doing it for $5 with their phone plans.
All right, well, I think this has been a good episode. We've covered an awful lot today, a lot more than we normally do. We usually hit maybe just 1 or 2 topics, and but we sort of went all over the place, but it was good. And thank you guys for being here. Thank you, especially Rick. I know you're out of town, and my experience last week makes me appreciate more what you do when you're traveling and join us each week. And so thank you for coming and being a part of this. We did miss Wes this week, and he's unfortunately going to be away for a few weeks with some vacation and other things going on in the summertime. But make sure you come and go over to kevinpurcell.org. You'll find each week's episodes posted there. Go to thislamp.com? Thislamp.com. And Antoine, you are all over the place, but your primary place to find people, again, is on Mobile Ministry Magazine, right?
You got it.
All right. Thanks for joining us, folks. We're finished, and it's been great talking with you today.